Hey there, and welcome to this month's episode of the Fraternus Forge podcast. This is a forum for young adult Catholic men and women to come together in conversation on topics of faith and morality, for as iron sharpens iron, so one man or woman sharpens another. Really excited that you're here with us this month. Really pumped to be starting season 2 after a brief hiatus where we sort of figured out, okay, well, what do we want season 2 to be about? What sort of topics do we want to cover? There's going to be more on dating and relationships because that's been playing really, really well, and I know folks have a lot of questions about that, but it's 2023, and we have an election coming up next year, so we're going to be doing some stuff on that. Really excited for this season, and glad that you're here for us, or here with us at the start of it. This month's episode features Michael Yule. Michael is our Director of Evangelization here in the Nashville chapter of YCP, Young Catholic Professionals. Some of you may be a part of that. And surprise, surprise, we're talking about dating again. But I feel like this conversation in particular is unique with regards to dating. And what I mean by that is I feel like in past episodes, a lot of what we've been talking about is functional, and that's all well and good. Don't get me wrong. I think tact and being thoughtful in how you approach dating and relationships and marriage is really, really important. But I think if I had to sum up this episode in one sentence, we're not in control. Like, I know a lot of us had really high hopes for this community when it first got started, and I still, for the record, do. But I know that the dating is difficult, and pursuing that vocation of marriage is difficult, and it's fraught with disappointments. And Mike and I sort of unpack in this episode an openness to that process in spite of and in facing those disappointments, just letting things develop naturally, remembering that we're not in control, trying to keep a level head when it comes to standards and expectations, the difference between those two, using the time wisely to work on ourselves, to meet Jesus in prayer and cultivate that relationship. Because ultimately, how we spend this season that we're in now is going to shape how the next season of married life and family life looks for many of us. That is it. Really appreciate you tuning in. Excited to share this episode with you. Let's jump into it.
It's something that I've heard from both men and women, not necessarily wanting to be talked about, but talked about. And I don't want to say complaining because that's not the right word. But problems or things that have been brought up, right? So it's something that I feel like I want to address. I'm in what I would consider I'm not married, but a successful relationship now going on 8 months, and thanks.
We love to see it.
I know, and it doesn't make me an expert on any sense of the imagination, but I do have relationships in the past that lasted a while that I feel like I could just maybe shed some light on. Some of these topics. Yeah. And I've dated secular world and I've dated Catholic world. So it's like I have shared experiences on both sides, and I'm not saying that people don't. I'm just saying that, I'm not going to come here and blame one sex for something. I'm going to come here, I think, with just general rules and statements and not say men should do this and women should do this. It's going to be like, I'm going to have some of that, but I'm going to be like, people need to do this, Definitely. So I feel like that's, everybody's talking about one side. Nobody's talking about what people should do. Like, as women need to do this, or as men need to do this. And I would love to see a woman do that, and women be like, I would love to see men do that. And it's like, that's kind of, and I've talked to Angelica about this a lot, and I've gotten like advice from my parents and stuff. So
I know what you're getting at. I've experienced what you're talking about too, where people were really, really excited when this community first started getting going, because it's like, oh, wow. I mean, I'm not sure what it was like growing up in New York, right?
North Carolina. I was born in New York. I grew up in North Carolina.
That's right. I'm not sure what it was like growing up over there, but it's like...
Baptist.
Very
Baptist.
Right.
Very Southern
Catholic
Baptist.
Community is...
Nothing, man. We had our church group, which was 30 people, which isn't bad. But we all went to different high schools. I'm a product of public school, and I guarantee people can see that from a mile away. Especially Franciscan. Like,
praise God, you made through. Like, I know it's not the landscape and the mindset that it is today, but
no, like a lot of people say that, and I think, I think today it's a lot worse because of critical race theory and all this other stuff, and the transgender stuff, and
Yeah.
But when I was going through school, man, I mean, I went through the best school. It was actually voted the best school in my county.
Mm-hmm.
So that was Colfax, Kernodle, and then Northwest Gilbert High School.
Did you say you went to Chernobyl?
Yeah, I went to Russia in the 80s, or Ukraine, wherever it was. No, Kernodle Middle School, and the Northwest. And you know what? It's just like I'm lucky enough to come out the way I did,
mm-hmm.
And same with my sister, my brother. That's a different story.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of it has to do also is I had a lot of struggles personally in terms of like my relationship with God.
Mm-hmm.
By the time I was about 18,
mm-hmm.
I acknowledged that he existed, but I was combative in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
And well, I questioned if he existed. That's a better thing to say. But like, still wanted to believe. But there was a lot going on in my life, a lot of loneliness and misery. And
sure,
every 18-year-old's lonely and miserable.
And yeah, I think those points in particular are like important ones to touch on because like I experienced that as well.
Yeah.
I think part of it has to do with like there being like a lack of Catholic community in a lot of places in the country.
Yeah.
Like growing up in the Metro Detroit area, I was cradle Catholic and like grew up actually, you know, I sort of take it back. It was somewhat of a decent Catholic community, but it was like culturally Catholic. Or, like cafeteria Catholic, where it's like you go to church on Sunday, but there isn't really community outside of that.
But when it's football season, that takes precedent.
Right, 100%.
Yeah, I grew up with that too.
Okay. And so like for folks to have grown up in that, like you grew up in that, I grew up in that, I was lonely for not just a spouse, but like peers as well.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of what's causing some of the challenge and the frustration that folks are experiencing now. It's like, this is the community, like I think this is what's going through most people's heads. This is certainly what's going through mine. This is the community that I've been looking for such a long time. This is where I want to like make faith-filled friendships that will last a lifetime and then find my spouse, settle down, raise kids, the whole 9 yards. I think a lot of people want that.
No, I agree.
Not everyone's getting it.
No, not everyone's getting it. And also people need to understand that my favorite thing to say is we're imperfect people discerning a perfect will.
Yeah.
And a lot of people look at me when I say that and they're like, well, and I'm like, you have to trust what you're doing, what you're praying for, what you're discerning with the Lord is right, but it might not be right. But God will still make it good because he does that. There was a priest up at Franciscan that I wholeheartedly disagreed on him with 99% of everything because of the way he treated men's ministry up there, and it was just bad. But there was one thing that he said was, he's like, I could die tomorrow and God could walk up to me and say, hey, thank you for being my priest. Or he could say, hey, thank you for being my priest. See that blonde over there? You're supposed to marry her. Like that's like imperfect people discerning perfect will. We're hoping that we're doing God's will. But we don't necessarily know. Right? And people are like, and I'm like, how?
Yeah.
You have faith that you know.
Yeah.
But we don't, unless God says, boom,
right.
Like, we're not sure. And I understand the whole blessed are those who believe and not see. But we're trusting what Christ told us.
And we don't know, like, for sure. I think this idea of knowing is also part of what might be causing some friction. Because it's like, I think for a long time, and I'll speak personally, maybe there are some who identify with this, maybe you resonate with this, but it's like, I have the desire for marriage, therefore my vocation is marriage.
Yes.
And like, even that in itself is wrong.
Yeah.
Because there are priests who will tell you that, no, I still have the desire for marriage too. There are single people who like have that desire and then just never doesn't work out for them. Yeah.
So the point of that was, your spouse might not be in Nashville. Sorry.
Dang.
Like, they might not be here.
Yeah.
And that's a hard pill to swallow, especially when you like have moved here, heard about this community. I think we just hit 800 in the group me.
Woo. And so like, what does that do from a mindset perspective? Like, how does that, because I feel like this might be the root or one of the roots of the frustration people are experiencing. Like if we take away that certainty, what does that do to our mindset in relation to vocation?
There has to be an openness, right? So you like I remember it was a priest who was engaged, and he was Lutheran. He grew up Lutheran and was engaged, and then he had just become Catholic through RCIA, and he walks into the priest's office after everything, and says, "Father, I feel called to be a priest." Broke off his engagement, and he's now a fantastic priest. So I think it's the openness. Even if like you're in a relationship, you could still be called to the religious life. Sorry, like that's just the case. And everybody, I think everybody here knows that, right? I think people are educated enough to know that just because you're dating somebody, just because you're engaged, you could still be called to being married. To religious life. Yeah. Like that is a possibility. And you know, Tim is famous for saying like you should be open until it's final. Until you have the rings on your finger or your hands have been anointed. Like you should be open. So, and I mean, I had trouble with that at the beginning because I was like, well, you have to discern one or the other, and I mean, discernment's a noun. So it's like, yeah, you kind of have to be open to both. I guess.
Yeah, and I feel like just to sort of play off that openness thread, I feel like there's a level of humility that needs to jump in there as well, where it's like, I don't know what God's will for me is in this life. I can sort of infer based on my experience, based on my skill set, based on my circumstance. I feel like God might be leading me in this way, and so moving in that direction. But then also, I read this in a book recently. Have you read He Leadeth Me? Have you read that book?
No.
I would really recommend it. It's a quick read. I'm about halfway through it, and I've only spent maybe an hour or two working on it. But it's essentially the story of this priest that went to Russia, comrade. during the what's up, Ange? During the Second World War. And he was held as a POW. And like because he was a priest, he was mistreated and all that stuff. But he like went there with the intention of ministering to people. And one of the chapters, it's really cool how well the chapters are broken down. Like there's one on the one in particular that I'm thinking about is discerning God's will. Where he sort of goes back and forth on whether it's right for him to go to Russia and minister to people. He's like, oh, like I felt this desire back in seminary. But now when I hear all these stories of people getting persecuted, or maybe it's just my own ego, how do I know that I'm actually called to go there? And he said the thing that made the difference for him, and this is what I'm trying to internalize, is asking for and relying on the Spirit's peace in that decision. Like if you move in a direction and it's sort of like there's some uncertainty there, that's something that has to be brought to prayer. Versus like if you're walking in God's will, there should be peace about it. It's not to say that it'll be easy,
right?
But there should be peace.
There should be peace about it. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I had discerned the priesthood for a little bit back in college. I actually was dating a girl. I broke up with her for a really short time because I felt that God was calling me to be a priest. Like there was this pressure. There's this pressure that was on my heart. Oh my gosh. And so I remember I was in my political philosophy class, and it was bad. And he dismissed the class. I bolted out of class and found the closest bathroom and just like dropped to my knees and just started crying. And I was like, "You win." And so the pressure almost instantly released. And what I got in prayer and what I believe the Lord was telling me was, I don't want you to be a priest. I want you to follow me. I want you to know that I'm in control. And so I broke up with her and I dove headfirst into prayer. And then shortly after that, she and I started dating again. But yeah, that was an eye-opening moment where you're just kind of like, you are not in control. And so it's things like that like gave me pause at first when I was like imperfect people discerning a perfect will, right? Where you're like, this is so obvious that this is from the Lord. Like he's not causing me physical pain. He's putting something in my heart that I am combating. So I am causing the pain on myself. And so finally, when you surrender that, whether it's your vocation or a relationship or whatever have you, you're infinitely going to be better off. Infinitely. And so it's mind blowing.
That is a that is a huge statement there. And I 100% resonate with it.
Yeah.
It's like, as soon as you can accept that you're not the one in control, that God is making a way for you, and what is required of us is not controlling every situation, but cooperating with God's grace and God's leadership.
The key is like, and I've talked to a lot of people about this. They're like, I do surrender. I'm like, do you?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like in my eyes, it's like losing weight. A lot of people just went, what? Sorry guys, give me a second. I'll correlate it. And it's like losing weight, and they're like, well, or actually better yet, it's like if you're trying to bulk up, and you're a twig. You weigh 140 pounds soaking wet, and you're 6 feet tall, and you just can't seem to gain weight.
I identify as someone who's 6 feet tall.
You're 6 feet tall in my heart, Matthew. And so let's say that the person's 6 feet tall, they're 140 pounds soaking wet, and they want to gain weight. And it's like, oh, I eat enough. Clearly not. Eat more. Oh, I eat 2,500 calories a day. Well, clearly you're not eating enough. Up to 3,000.
Yeah.
Well, and does that for a couple of weeks. Well, I'm eating enough. Have you gained any weight? No. Keep eating more. Like I'm sorry, that's what it is.
Yeah.
And there might be a medical issue, but please don't nitpick.
Sure. I think the general principle.
Yeah, that's the general principle, and it's like surrender. Well, I have. Have you?
Have you though?
Surrender more. You have to fully surrender. Like that was the first time I realized that I had to just fully surrender. Now, I do like to still try and control parts of my life. Everybody does. It's this aspect of that, we want to make sure that we're doing what gives us happiness, not what brings happiness to the Father. To
play off of that for a second, like the control piece.
Yeah.
I feel like one aspect of what is making the current dating, just agree with you, what one aspect of what's making the current dating landscape so challenging is that areas like Nashville, thriving metro centers, typically attract type A personalities, where it's like, I am used to getting my way, I am used to setting my eyes on a target, exerting effort and making it happen.
Oh yeah.
And so you have a lot of people who are like, my goal is marriage and family and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
And they are exerting effort, and God is like, you're not surrendering. I see that.
Yeah.
That's one.
Yeah.
Like, does that track?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
And so, like, just because you want something doesn't mean it's going to bring happiness. The grass isn't always greener. Just because you want, or it might work on paper.
Yep.
Right there, there are tons of things I could be talking about with that. I'm thinking about a couple things in particular, but like it could be a job, it could be a relationship, it could be a house, it could be whatever you want. It could work on paper, but in practicality, in practice, it might not work, and that's something that the Lord knows, and He just knows. He just knows. Like that's that's a blanket statement. He just knows. He is
definitely, yeah. I love this thread that we're on. I feel like there's so much that could be
Oh my
said
gosh,
here.
we could really.
God really does know what's best for all of us, and like surrender is an interesting word. What I want to move to is like, okay, it's clear that God has a will for everybody in this community. God knows what their vocation is.
Yeah.
He's trying to lead them to it. It's clear that we shouldn't be over here white knuckling it and being like, I know what I'm gonna do.
Yeah.
But I also don't think that surrender... I used to think that surrender sort of looks like, okay, I surrender, so I'm going to sit in my room.
It's like, nope, you got to be willing to give stuff up.
Right.
That's what it is.
So I'm wondering what that surrender looks like, practically speaking.
Yeah. For me, I had thought that God for a long time had put being a police officer on my heart. For a very long time.
I remember that, yeah.
I mean, as far as back I can remember, I wanted to be a cop at some point in my life.
Yep.
I thought I would, but there was always something that happened. So I remember the first time I was going through the process was Charlotte Mecklenburg PD, and I had gotten to the interview, and we were like 2.5 hours into the interview, and they cut it off because they said that I was a flight risk because I had too many high school and college jobs, which didn't make sense to me.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So I kind of paused about that, and I went, that's interesting to say, but okay. And then 6 months later, the Charlotte riots happened. I would have been fresh out of the academy. A lot of recruits died.
Yeah.
It would have been bad. in New York, I was going through the NYPD process. I was fast-tracking through the NYPD process. And then all of the riots started happening in New York in 2020 and 2021. With the DC Metro, same thing. Like, there's always been something that happened. I don't know what happened here in Nashville, because I'd gotten through the interview process, and then I just did not hear from my inspector, my recruiter, investigator, that's the word, sorry. And I don't know what happened there, but there's always been something. And so finally I was like, all right, I don't know what you want with this cop thing, so I'm done. Like, I haven't thought about it since. Not really. Parallel with surrender and dating is you have to surrender your vocation. And that's going to look different for everybody. But surrender is going to look different for everybody.
Yep.
So I can't put a definite on it or anything, an absolute.
Yep.
For me, it was, I just broke down, and I was like, "You win!" Like, I just, and it's the feeling is just pure, unadulterated letting go, and that's going to look different for everybody, and it's just not worrying about it. We as people, we're stressed about everything. And the moment you just know that it's in God's hands, it's a light bulb. That's the best way to describe it. You just, it's like going and having a really good confession. It just releases all of this pressure and stress and weight on your shoulders, and you're just like, that's what that feels like. And like, for me, that's what it felt like, and it was a very great feeling, just to truly surrender my relationship, and just have God, I just want you to follow me. And I was like, I thought it was, but like, like that's, and so I that might not answer the question that you're looking for, but it's going to look different for everybody, I think.
I agree with that. I think the core point of this is what I thought I was supposed to do.
Yeah.
Like, if you take your experience with the police academy or being a police officer and sort of tie it into this overall thing, it's like, I am moving in this direction. I am continuing to experience frustration.
Yeah.
At what point do you sort of take the indication from your experience and say, you know what, like, I'm setting this aside.
Yeah.
I have discerned through my relationship with God that this is no longer for me.
Yeah.
And I'm going in a different direction.
Right.
I feel like that element of surrender is the one that can be challenging. Because I feel like dating in particular is very challenging because people are getting rejected from the police academy left and right on an almost daily or weekly basis.
Yes.
And like, it's different though, because that's kind of part of the game. Yeah. Like, it'd be one thing if like I have a job as a project manager. Yeah. And if I'm just applying for like years and not getting any jobs, even with my track record, that's one thing. Like, oh, maybe this isn't for me anymore. Maybe God wants me to move on to something else. But I feel like with dating in particular, 99% of people you meet are not going to be your spouse. Right. 99.99% of people you meet will not be your spouse. Yeah. Versus, like, if you're seeing a 99.99% failure rate in the job market, probably should look somewhere else.
Yeah, that's different. If your degree was like underwater basket weaving and you're trying to be a nuclear engineer, sorry, that's not going to be for you. So I'm glad you brought up the point of 99.99%, because the idea of, and I don't know anybody here has this belief, but the idea of the one, it doesn't exist. I'm sorry. I don't want to say. No, keep your standards. So, like, for me, my standards are Catholic. Yep. I want them to be healthy. Yep. Family life, and then a couple other things. Like, I want them to have good hygiene, like those kinds of things, because in my belief, that's part of, the ability to take care of yourself also helps helps show the ability to take care of a family. If you can't take care of yourself, how are you going to take care of a family? Sure. And so those are standards for me. But that's it. I don't care how tall you are. I don't care what hair color or eye color you have. I just don't. And that shouldn't be a standard. Like, it really shouldn't. I'm sorry. Like, because if your standard is a guy who looks like Chris Hemsworth, and I'm just putting that out there. So let's say 6'4", 240. Your standards are 6'4", rippling muscles, makes $650,000 a year or $200,000 a year, and all these other things, and Catholic. That should be a standard for all Catholics. But your dating pool just went to zero.
Yeah,
it absolutely just went to zero. I'm sorry. Like, that guy in Nashville. Again, your spouse might not be in Nashville, but that guy doesn't exist. Sorry, David Joniak and Zach Lewis married.
I was waiting for it. I was like, it's got to happen at some point. Love you guys.
Love you guys. David? That was a compliment, by the way.
Yeah, and I have heard this argument before, and like, I think it goes both ways. Like,
it does.
You could easily say to like an audience of guys, like, hey, listen, if you're looking for like a super devout woman, which, like, by the way, should be a baseline.
Yeah, that should be baseline.
But she needs to have like blonde hair, like this kind of.
I agree with that.
This kind of figure, this kind of background, interested in these kind of sports.
Yeah,
lines up with you in these areas. Wants to homeschool kids. Da 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 da. All these things.
Yeah,
like, that's a lot.
That's your dating pool just for the guys too, man. I don't want to just sing about women because it's on both sides.
Right.
Like, there has to be an understanding between standards and expectations. There has to be a difference because a lot of the times, and this is both men and women, the line gets blurred.
Yep.
It really does. And this is something I'm really passionate about because I see it every day. I hear about it all the time.
Yep.
And it's insane. Like, if you are doing the same thing over and over and over again, expecting a different result, but getting the same result, that is the definition of insanity.
Yep.
It is. Like, so something's got to change. It's not the world. Yep. I'm sorry, it's not. It's probably you. Like,
that's one of the things that you put in the show notes that I would to expand on. I feel like we will come back around to openness because I feel like that's sort of the end point of this thread. But one of the things you put in the show notes was, is it everybody else who's crazy?
Or is it you? Yeah.
And I feel like for a while, I thought that, like, the reason that I haven't found the right girl or whatever, excuse me, the right woman. I'm
there you
trying
go.
to translate out of that verbiage.
Yeah.
But the reason that I haven't found the right woman is because I haven't looked in the right places or I haven't done X, Y, Z, when in actuality it's like, looking back now I can see, I probably should have done this differently in this relationship. I needed to grow up here.
Yeah.
I needed to be more transparent and open and honest here. And that's sort of what you're getting at.
Yeah,
with,
absolutely.
Maybe it's you.
Yeah, like, there's this idea of, am I doing everything in my power to be ready? Am I ready? Like, you have to actually look at yourself and be like, am I actually ready? And for a while I thought I was. I am now. At least I believe I am now. And, Angelica and I have talked about it. But back to the point of, it might not be everybody else. It might be you. Like, I would say if you fail 100 times, not just throwing a number out there, obviously, but like, if it's not happening, then there's something wrong, and it's not the world.
There's a blocker.
Yep. What's going on? Yep. You need to sit down, take a hard look in the mirror, talk to God, figure out what it is, and ask Him whatever the obstacle. Ask Him to remove it. Ask Him to soften your heart. Do something. You have to, because if it's not happening, then there's a disconnect somewhere. Maybe you think that your expectations are low, but you're viewing them as standards, or your expectations are too high. It could be any number of things. Yeah. It really could, and you have to sit back, take a breath, and be like, am I doing everything in my power? Am I ready? Am I doing everything in my power to for my spouse or for the Lord? Because truth is, you might not. Like we're, and this is not just a Nashville thing. This is a USA thing. We're seeing the highest divorce rate ever. We're seeing people get married way later than they should be. I'm 32.
If they get married.
If they get married at all. I'm 32, so I'm a little older.
Yep.
And so, like, I had to take a hard look in the mirror and be like, am I actually ready? No. No, I wasn't. You know, you think you are, but you're not. I was a naive, dumb kid. Now I'm just a dumb kid.
Progress.
Yeah, progress. No, I view myself as a big kid all the time. But no, like you have to really take a look in the mirror. Like that is a point I really want to drive home. Is it everyone else, or is it actually me? And you might think you are God's gift to earth. You need a humility check.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Definitely.
That's just how it is.
Yeah, that's something I can for sure run into as well, where it's like, it's really easy, and like, here's the other thing too. I think it's really easy to point at the stuff that I'm doing well.
Yeah.
And be like, I'm doing all of this. Why hasn't it happened? I heard somebody say this recently in like just a talk. Do you know Frank Peretti by any chance?
I've heard the name.
He's a really just good author.
Okay.
He does like some talks. Look him up on YouTube. God's Way or My Way is a really good talk.
Yeah,
but,
I believe it.
He's got this bit where he talks about athletes.
Yeah.
And he says, like, these guys are among the most impressive physical specimens in
Yeah.
the world. They are disciplined. They are focused. They have grit. They have a high pain tolerance. And we sort of uphold them as models of masculinity in our society. But look how many broken homes they've created.
Yeah.
Like, they just don't have the emotional maturity to do X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
I'm not the starting center for the Nashville Predators, but I've done that where I've looked at myself and been like, I exercise, I eat well, I have a good job, I have a house. What's wrong? Like, what could you possibly want? And like, even in my tone, you can hear it. It's like my emotional maturity is just not there.
It could be a variety of different things, man. Like that's between you and the Lord. Like that truly is. Or, you know, your confidant or your spiritual director, but you have to sit down and hash those things out. And you know me, like I always have an open ear. I know you always have an open ear. So like if there are issues, I'm obviously there to hear it, and vice versa. Or Tim or, you know, Jimmy. So it's just like you have to really, and you have to look at your faults, or else how are you going to grow? You know, it's back to your sports analogy. Like I was big into CrossFit a long time ago, and people would always talk about, oh, this event's good for me because this is my strength. Well, why aren't you working on your weaknesses? Like obviously keep up your strengths. You don't want those to go, but why aren't you working on your weaknesses? What are your weaknesses? Do you have too much pride? Are you overweight? Like, do you take care of yourself? Like that's a thing. Like, sorry, like a theological thing is these bodies are temporary. These are gifts from God. We are temples of the Holy Spirit. We are called to take care of these.
Yes.
And a lot of people are like, that's shallow. And I'm like, you can think that, but this is like, I don't view it as a thing. Like, this is a temple of the Holy Spirit. Like, I want to preserve this as long and best as I can because I was put on this planet for a reason. God gave me life for a reason. And so I need to treat said borrowed property as such carefully. 100%. Like it's like renting a house. You want to take, and that's a horrible analogy because the human body and God are so much more than that.
Right.
But you want to take care of it because it's temporary.
Definitely. We are stewards.
We are stewards
of the bodies we've been given, the intellects we've been given, even the experience. Where it's like, what do you do with those experiences, those circumstances, the resources God's given you? You're a steward of all of them.
Yeah.
I love this thread of like using. I've used this before. Maybe you've heard this before, where it's like, as a vocation, marriage is about sacrifice and it's going to be difficult. Yes, there's a lot of joy in it.
Yeah.
But why not do the work now?
Yeah.
Because you're going to have to do it either way.
Yeah.
You're going to come into contact with these things either way. So why not do it now while you're single and you have the time and the energy to do so?
Exactly.
So when you actually get into your marriage, like it's smoother.
Yeah.
You find someone else who's probably done that work too. And it's not to say that you won't have anything to work on, but you'll have less total to work on with
100%.
the person that you end up with.
Yeah. So it's a lot of people ask me why, you know, there's the big reason why, oh, you know, what are your exercise goals? I want to chase my kids around. That's it. That's all I care about now. I want to chase my kids around. You know, for a while there, my knees ache, my shoulder, I have a current issue in my labrum and my bicep tendon and everything, but I'm still trying to lose weight because I want to chase my kids. I want to have a joyful marriage and a happy family. I want to be able to pick up Angelica and spin her around and kiss her daily and goof off with her and, whatever. But a lot of people ask me that. I want to be healthy for my kids. I want to be there for them.
Setting the objective. And I feel like that also ties into this idea of, because physical fitness is an important thing.
Yeah.
And that's what you're hammering home here.
Yeah.
But like you're setting a specific goal.
Yeah.
And it's not like physical fitness is the end all be all.
No. It's my kids are the end. My family is the end all be all.
And that requires that you balance and fill and pour into a lot of different buckets.
Yeah.
It's no longer just like I'm ripped, therefore I deserve like an awesome.
I also want to be able to protect my family.
Right.
If you are, doing martial arts or training or whatever it is, you have a higher chance of protecting your family.
Yep. Definitely.
So.
Definitely. I love this. So like we've talked a little bit about surrender. We've talked about like taking our vocation, giving it to God and being like, I'm no longer in control of this. Yeah. We've talked about discerning on a moment to moment basis. Like, okay, how can I improve myself? How do I relate to that vocation and sort of discern what God's calling me to? And then based on that, where do I need to grow in the immediate term? And then there's also spending time with God in prayer and the sacraments.
Yeah, absolutely. That needs to be the forefront of everything.
Yep.
That absolutely needs to be the forefront of everything. If you're not spending time with the Lord, what are you doing? Mm-hmm. Sorry.
No, you're 100% right. I feel like that's an important part of in this season of waiting and growing. Yeah. Like you're working on yourself in the ways that you feel God is calling you to, but then also just spending time with Him and enjoying that relationship too.
Yeah, absolutely. The first things I do in the morning after I wake up is the first thing is I say good morning to the Lord, say a quick prayer. I do my morning devotional, and then I text Angelica good morning. Those are the first things I do every morning. Literally every morning. And it's really funny. At the beginning of our relationship, Angelica didn't like getting so many texts from me. when we were talking and stuff, and then when we first started dating, and then she was like, now like I look at my phone and I smile every time, and I'm like, gotcha.
That is okay. Brief little side tangent. I love that. That's beautiful.
Thanks.
Brief side tangent. And then I want to come back to openness here in just a second. Mm-hmm. Texting frequency. I know it's like a super nuanced thing.
Yeah.
And maybe it just boils down to just pay attention to like the response rate of the other person. And like text them when you want to text them. Stuff like that. But I wonder about that sometimes. Because on one extreme, there's I'm going to send her 6 texts every 5 minutes.
Right.
And she's going to be like, this guy's insane.
Insane, yeah.
And this is coming from a guy's perspective. I'd be curious to hear like the woman's perspective. Fraternusforge@gmail.com. You send us your ideas. I want to hear this.
You tell them how bad this podcast is. Particularly this episode.
Don't talk about my friend that way. Don't talk about me that way.
You're great.
Stop talking about my friend that way. Don't do it.
Self-deprecation. Woo.
But then on the opposite extreme, there's sort of like the, like maybe mystery and like you text like once every couple hours. I don't want to be too quick on the response, that sort of thing.
Think about it too much, man. Like I defied all odds of friends with my relationship with Angelica.
Okay.
So she was being pursued by another guy. They called it off on a Friday. And before that, I had told her that, like, I liked her, and she's like, it means a lot to me. I appreciate it, but like, I'm currently talking to somebody else. And I was like, great. She's like, I just need you to be patient. And I was like,
what does that mean?
Okay, cool, not a problem. And so I was still like texting her, and then one day she was like, can you not? And I was like, yeah, sure, totally fine. I won't text you today. And I texted her the next day. But she was going through her own struggle, and had I known that like it was that big of a struggle for her at the time, I might have backed off a little bit, but the outcome might have been different. So for me, I like to see my goal and go after it, right? Mm-hmm. So I don't want to say she was a goal, but I saw her and I pursued her. Like I saw the potential that we had together and everything, and it felt right. And I just remember being at Mass, like, so it's your red, white, and blue party. Nice. So thank you for that, by the way.
I remember you saying, we were at the YCP thing this past week.
Yeah.
And you said, like, man, that red, white, and blue party. And I thought about it later. I was like, Is that when they
That's when I that's like it was the kickoff. So we were right over here. I really wanted to go dancing. I had not wanted to go dancing this badly in a long time, and now she and I go basically every Friday night to the Palace. It's a fun time. You guys should go. So we went, and we talked a little bit. It was a little awkward because 8.5 years difference. So I thought the age might be an issue, but at this point, I just don't care. Don't let age be an issue. Think about it first, but like 10 years, maybe pause. She and I are 8.5. Sure. 8.5 years difference. So it's not really an issue. She's actually very mature for her age. She's more mature than I am, like by leaps and bounds. I'm a giant child. She is not. So we were over here and we went dancing, and then I went to St. Mary's the next day for Mass. And I saw her. She was sitting alone, so I walked up and I sat next to her and said good morning and everything. And during the Our Father, I remember looking down at her and going, huh, that's different. Like, something sparked.
Okay.
Yeah, there was a spark there. Okay. And I was like, interesting. And then we had brunch at my house right after that.
Something's different in, like, how she looked at you or how you felt?
How I looked at her.
Okay,
like, I saw her. Like, I actually, like, saw her, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, this girl's pretty great.
And this is when you switched, like, to being interested in her.
Yeah. From nothing to being interested almost overnight.
You had been friends with her for a while, right?
Not really.
Okay.
Not really at all. I just really want to go dancing. She was like, yeah, let's go. And so I was trying to get a group together. And I wanted to do it out here, but she's like, let's just go to the Palace. And I was like, I really don't want to go to the Palace. And then we went to the Palace. And it just, like, something sparked, man. I don't know what it was, but it was great, and it's been great for the last 8 months, a little more than 8 months.
So that's really interesting. I feel like that ties back into what we were talking about with openness.
Yeah, earlier, it does, actually.
Where it's perfectly. Like, you weren't necessarily pursuing her until that switch flipped.
I didn't even necessarily start pursuing her because I didn't think it was a thing. Like, there was an interest, but I was like, I don't know. Is this a thing?
Yeah.
And then it slowly started to build.
I feel like that, just based on what I've heard recently, I feel like that is the way to do it.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like that sort of openness is what leads to successful relationships.
I agree with you.
I feel like the current sort of model, and just speaking for myself, is some girls gotta, like, knock my socks off. Excuse me, some woman needs to knock my socks off. Day one that I meet her, like, I have to realize, wow, she, like, checks all the boxes, amazing XYZ, as opposed to being friends with somebody, not necessarily feeling anything immediately, but being open to those interactions. That's another thing too, where it's like, I'll interact with someone at an event or a party or whatever the case may be,
and it's just like nothing there,
and there's nothing there, and because of that, I will deliberately, like,
write them off,
write them off, or, like, go out of my way to avoid this person. And I would wager that, like, it kind of works both ways.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm just observing or guessing, but I feel like there's a lot of that in the community in general, where it's I don't feel something immediately, therefore I'm going to sort of guard myself against this person because I'm guarding their heart or XYZ. Mike's rolling his eyes over here. I know you've got something.
Guarding their heart.
And for the record, I don't think that guarding your heart is entirely wrong.
I don't either.
It can go too far.
It's for those who went to Franciscan, that was, I'm guarding my heart. I'm guarding their heart. Let's guard each other's heart. It was like breathing. It was, sorry, I didn't mean to roll my eyes that hard. No, you should guard their heart. I just hate the term. Mm-hmm. Because, like, if it's the idea of guarding your heart, it's like, well, your heart's the Lord's. Mm-hmm. So I'm not saying don't guard your heart. I'm saying open it a little bit. Open that door. Mm-hmm. Unlock the door.
Yep.
Let somebody knock. Even if it's not who you expect. Mm-hmm. Let somebody be willing to knock. So it's really funny. So
can you just say that one more time?
Yeah.
Like, that's really good.
Yeah. Unlock your door and let somebody be willing to knock. Look through the people. I don't care. Right.
Because there's a difference between having the door, like, flung wide open.
Yeah.
And there's a difference between having it locked, deadbolt, lock, like, locking the knob, all that stuff.
Yeah. Unlock the door. I'm not saying let anybody in. Right. I'm saying be open to a possibility.
Yeah.
and somebody's going to knock. You know, I truly believe that's the case. It's really funny. So Angelica didn't had heard about me before we started dating, before we had a conversation. She heard about me, so she instantly wrote me off. A lot of people do that. A lot of people don't like me because I'm brash, I'm loud, and I'm obnoxious, whatever. I'm a big kid. And they don't like me when they first meet me. You and I had this conversation.
We actually did.
We had this conversation. Yeah, you didn't like me when we first met. It's not that you didn't like me, it's that you just you're like, this guy, what the you know?
I think, yeah, like, just context.
Yeah.
Historically speaking, you're very assertive. In like, I don't think you're too assertive. Mm-hmm. You're very assertive.
Thank you.
You're also very smart. And you're like very outspoken. Like, all good things. Unlike Jimmy. Which part are we talking about? The smart part?
Yeah. Just kidding. No, Jimmy's very smart. He's also very he's there are a lot of similarities between him and myself, but we're different people. We're different people.
But like, I didn't realize that, like, initially I didn't realize that your heart and like your love for others was as big as it was.
Man. Like,
that was the turning point for me.
I remember taking that love language test.
Yeah.
And physical touch was number one. It's changed a lot since then, but physical touch was number one, and then acts of service was last, which was weird for me to think about because I love doing stuff for others. I go out of my way to do stuff for others. Mm-hmm. And so there's an airplane flying over. So it was just interesting because I love helping people. I love people. Yeah. Period.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's huge. And I feel like that self-knowledge is important when you're working on yourself and sort of understanding this is my temperament, this is where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
And then also having that awareness when you're in interactions with other people.
Yeah.
Where it's like, this is my background. When I've been in situations like this in the past, this is how it's typically played out.
Yeah.
But if I put myself in this moment and I ask for like God's grace, like, what do you want me to do in this moment? Like, forget about the past for a second.
Yeah.
Forget about the future and what could be. Like, horse blinders.
Yeah. Like,
literally all I've got is this moment.
Lord, I'm focused on you. Nothing is around me.
Right.
Yeah.
And like, how do I show up for this person in this moment?
Yeah.
That's another thing too, where it's like, people have been interested in me and I've been like, no.
Same.
Like, absolutely not.
Yeah.
And I feel like that is locking the door, like we talked about before,
it is.
where it's like, a conversation is not a marriage proposal.
No, it's not. A coffee date isn't a marriage proposal.
It's not a marriage proposal. And like, that exploration, I think, is important.
Yeah.
And because like, either you're going to go on a bunch of dates, realize that you're like a good match, and you get married and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
Or you're going to interact with this person and learn more about
what
you want in the process.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Like, that's why I'm okay with dating. So I was allowed to start dating when I was 16.
Oh, nice.
Wait,
you had dates at 16?
Yeah. I had a girlfriend at 16.
I think I was still learning what deodorant was.
That's fair.
16.
I was using Axe body spray. Ugh. Oh gosh, man. I remember freshman year of high school. Who's got the Old Spice or the Axe spray? Everybody in my freshman PE class smelled like the same deodorant because we all
I was there. I remember.
Yeah, so you get it. But so no, I understand what you're talking about. But yeah, I was allowed to start dating when I was 16. And I think a lot of people are going to get cringe at that, and I'm like, it gave me a good general baseline to understand what I'm looking for. And I had to go through experiences to be able to get to where I am today. So everybody's going to be different. I'm not saying everybody should start dating at 16, but it gave me good experiences in understanding that I want a Catholic woman. Mm-hmm. I have a Catholic woman. I have an incredible Catholic woman. But like, that was it because I was dating secular through that time. Yep. Even post college. Mm-hmm. Like, I let my standards bend a little bit and try dating non-Catholic women. It just didn't work out. Or lukewarm Catholic women, and it just didn't work out. I want somebody on fire for the Lord. Mm-hmm.
And that was like, that came as a result of you putting yourself out there and being open.
Yeah.
And like having those experiences. Yeah.
So back to my original point. Was Angelica didn't like me when we first met because she had this understanding of me. And then like it was a slow buildup of like we were talking. No, we were at a rosary at the Colby house, and I offered up the rosary for my future spouse, and I do that. I still do that. I offer up my rosary for Angelica and my future spouse because it's very possible she might not be.
Yeah.
You know, sorry, sweetheart. Really hoping you are. That's the game plan anyway.
Comrade.
Comrade. That is the game plan. You have no need to worry. And people would probably like raise their eyebrow at that, and I'm like, it's back to the conversation about discernment.
Yeah.
But so she didn't like me, but it's very funny because the relationship I looked at growing up the most obviously was your parents.
Yeah.
So the relationship I looked at was that, and my mom told me something similar. She's like, "Oh, I hated your dad when I first met him." And I went, "Really?" And she's like, "Yeah." She's like, "He was loud, obnoxious. He ignored me." And I was like, "What are you talking about? He ignored you?" And so she told me a scenario because my dad's best friend liked my mom, and she told me a scenario where one of my dad's best friends. So we call him Uncle Mark.
Okay,
it's a thing. So my Uncle Mark was trying to talk to my mom. My dad was there, and my mom was trying to engage my dad in conversation. My dad just went, "Hi," and walks away. Just walked away. He was actually being a good wingman.
Okay.
If you think about it.
Oh, so Mark was interested.
Mark was interested in my mom.
Okay, gotcha.
So he was being a good wingman at the time. And I told my mom that. And my mom was like, "That's so stupid." I'm like, "That's guys. That is what we do." I have done that for so many friends.
Yeah.
Where I'll be talking to somebody and I'll look at them and they'll be engaging them. I'll be like, "I'm going to get some water. I'll let you two talk."
Yeah.
And I'll just walk away.
Yeah.
Ladies, that is a thing. You would now have a secret to the men. But that is truly a thing. Like, I've done that for Jimmy. I've done that for Tim. I've probably done that for you unknowingly. Like, I just do that.
I think you probably have.
Like, I just get up and I walk away. It's just the case. Jimmy's done it for me with Angelica. Like, when we were having a lot of people over, I made dinner for a bunch of people. And Jimmy got up and walked away. And I moved closer to her.
I feel like...
That's the number one thing.
What is? Sorry.
Leaving a scenario, like let's say you like somebody and I'm having a conversation and you walk up and you're trying to engage and everything like that, and I see the way you're looking at her, I'll be like, "Hey, I'm going to let you two talk. I'm going to get some water," and I'll leave the conversation.
Yep.
Like, "I'm thirsty. I have to go to the bathroom. Excuse me, I have to go to the bathroom." I do that all the time. "Excuse me, I have to go to the bathroom," and I'll run to the bathroom, but I'll like wash my hands or something, so I'm not lying. But that's a wingman move. It really is.
Yeah, I feel like I'm going to make some assumptions here, and like ladies obviously would love to hear your feedback on this, like and guys too.
Yeah.
I want people's feedback on this. We're speculating and I feel like these are good ideas, but like if something sounds off or if you feel like we're missing part of the picture, fraternusforge@gmail.com.
Let us know. Or you can find me and yell at me.
I like that idea of like having someone else on your side in those interactions.
Yeah.
Like letting someone, and I would wager, like the thing that I was going to assume is that it probably comes easier to the ladies than it does to the guys, because ladies on average are typically a bit more relationship oriented and are like more comfortable talking about,
Sure.
well, I'm curious about this and like analyzing stuff from that perspective. I think there's a lot of that on the guys' perspective in this community, which is awesome.
Yeah.
But like, if you're curious about somebody or if you're interested in somebody, like let a friend know.
Yeah.
So like together they can sort of, oh, like I actually know that person or I know someone who does. Here's some opportunities, like, because then if you're in that interaction or if you're in a circumstance where that person's, let's say, at the same event or at the same party or something, your friend can be there for you.
Yeah.
And sort of, like maybe we go and we engage this person as a group.
Yeah.
And then I'll peel off and like let the two of you talk. Something like that works pretty well.
Especially if your person's a generally nervous person or a little shy or a little more introverted. I think that's a really good idea. Talking to women is, especially a new one that you might be interested in. Yeah. Your heart starts pumping and you get a little scared. You get a little nervous. Like you still do. Like, yeah. Like before Angelica, I remember talking to women and I'd always try and make a joke.
Yeah, same.
Always try and make a joke, or I'll comment and be like, hey, nice shoes, or, whatever.
Right.
And it's not trying to be creepy. It's just I'm trying to break the ice without saying,
hello. Yeah. That's
like some corny dad joke, like a polar bear about breaking the ice joke. I can't think of the joke, but there's one about a polar bear breaking the ice. And it's just kind of like, it's so, it is intimidating. Like dating and getting to know somebody is very intimidating. Mm-hmm. But you just have to, and women can pick up on that, and guys can pick up, men can pick up on that too, but you have to just be confident. Be confident in who you are as a person. Yeah. And just engage. Know what you like, know who you are, and engage with the person. And don't be afraid to disagree on a first date.
That's huge. I'm putting a pin in the thread that we're on. Let's talk about disagreeing for a second. I want to make sure that we come back to this like interaction type thing, but disagreeing in particular, I think is really important. Why would you say disagreeing or like being willing to disagree is important? Because
it sparks intelligent conversation. Mm-hmm. It sparks thought. It sparks seeking truth. Mm-hmm. In order to think critically, you have to be willing to disagree. You have to have your own thoughts. If you can't, so it's funny. I remember I was talking to somebody about this. I agree with job unions. I am actually for them.
Okay.
And a lot of people it's a liberal concept. It is a liberal concept because it's a social construct. And this guy he's Catholic, and he and I were talking about it. And I know this isn't dating. I can talk about cats and dogs for Angelica and I. But this guy engaged in that conversation and disagreed with me. And I was like, why do you think they're a bad thing? He's like, well, there are bad ones. I was like, there are also good ones. I was like, there are bad priests. There are also good priests. Many good priests. There are bad cops. There are bad lawyers. There's bad everything in every profession. Right. And then I was curious because I wanted to know, because I wanted to make sure my belief was in line with the church. And the church is for labor unions, which was news to me.
That's something that kind of gets swept under the rug sometimes, which is a whole nother conversation.
Oh, it's a whole nother 60 minutes.
The church is actually one of the most, if not the most pro-human rights organizations.
Yeah, and labor unions are for the people.
Right.
Like, I understand that this whole idea of for the people is a very socialist thing. Right. And the Catholic Church is not socialist in any aspect. Right. But it's for people keeping corporations in check, and that's what labor unions are meant to do. Yep. Police union in New York, collective bargaining. Police union in New York is great. The firefighter union, the nursing union in New York is great. I was part of a great union when I was working for AT&T. Mm-hmm. It's the Communication Workers Association, I think, the CWA. Mm-hmm. It was a great union. They fought for us. They fought for me. Yep. I was going through some stuff, and my union rep came, and they were like, "You have no grounds to do anything to him." Mm-hmm. And they just looked at him, and he was like, "You don't. Like, sorry." So,
and that I almost feel like that even ties into disagreeing.
Yeah, it does.
Because like those labor unions have to step up and say like, this is not acceptable.
Yeah.
And we feel strongly that option B is the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And that's good and that's attractive. Yeah. Like if someone that you're dating or in a conversation with comes to you and says like, I feel strongly about this.
Okay, why?
Like
let's have a conversation.
Let's have a conversation about
Angelica and I's biggest argument has been about cats and dogs, and it hasn't even been an argument. We haven't really argued about anything. Like we have our own little scruffs, but like the biggest thing that she and I disagree on is cats and dogs. She's a cat person. I'm a dog person.
Okay.
And like that was set on our first date, and we had a conversation about it.
And like that, I think in particular is a really effective disagreement to have.
It is.
Because you get all of the benefits of having a disagreement with your significant other.
Yeah.
You sort of get to see what they're like in conflict, how they justify their opinions.
Yeah.
But it's not about something that's going to like wreck your relationship if you guys don't land in the same spot.
No, like if the person's like, "Oh, I'm pro-choice."
Let's talk about this.
Why? like engage, but if they're not willing to budge, like, sorry, we're Catholic. Like,
right.
No. Right. Or if they're like I remember I was dating an ex-girlfriend, and a big disagreement she and I had was about the death penalty. Mm-hmm. And people were like, well, Pope Francis changed it. And I was like, you can't change what literally was talked about in a council. Mm-hmm. Like, the Pope doesn't have that authority. All right. Mm-hmm. Like, by himself. just because he rewrote the catechism. Like, no, it's I forgot which one it is, but they talked about capital punishment in one of the, it might have been like Trent or something. I don't remember. Jimmy, let me know if you're listening to this. They were like, no, capital punishment is fine. Like, it's justice. It's justice on the person, and it's justice for the person who was killed. And that she and I had a huge argument about that. It actually caused a wedge in our relationship. Because she just couldn't get behind it. And I mean, the Catholic Church views it as a last resort, but yeah. So, and I still agree with it, no matter what Pope Francis says.
And coming back to like this idea of relationships and disagreeing in relationships, is that
it's okay. It's healthy to disagree. It's healthy to discuss. It's healthy to argue, and I'm not saying scream arguing.
Yeah.
So there's a married couple that I grew up with their sons. They're both on high blood pressure medicine because they don't disagree or argue. So they're both on high blood pressure medicine.
Yeah.
Because they keep everything bottled in. I'm like, you're going to stroke out at 50.
Yep.
If you don't have a disagreement. You will. Like, that's just the case. Your blood pressure's too high.
I heard somebody say recently that, like, the more you tell the truth, the stronger you become.
Yeah.
And the more you lie or the more that you avoid telling the truth, the weaker you become.
I agree with that.
Yeah. And weakness can take the form of your mood in the current moment. It can take the form of, like, physical ailments. Yeah. I don't know exactly what the chain of causation is there, but it seems pretty clear to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, so healthy disagreements.
Healthy
disagreement.
Also,
like, it's also appealing and it's attractive to just speculating. Ladies, let us know if this was right. And I would say it's attractive from the guy's perspective to be across the table from somebody and to hear that conviction in their voice.
Yeah.
To hear them take a stance contrary to you. Because if you think about it, like, if you're across the table from someone that you're really attracted to, and then they say something, or you say something that they disagree with, and then they come back at you with a, no, I don't think that's right.
Yeah.
In a way, it kind of makes them even more attractive because they're being courageous.
Yeah.
They're willing to potentially lose you for the sake of their beliefs.
Yeah.
That's, in a lot of ways, pretty
vigilance.
Attractive. Yeah.
Be vigilant. You said be convicted. Be convicted in your beliefs. Courageous. Be courageous. Be convicted and be vigilant. Like, if you truly believe something, obviously, if somebody brings a counterpoint, listen and engage.
Right.
And the person who's getting disagreed with, figure out why they believe what they do.
Yeah.
Don't just sweep it under the rug. Have a conversation.
Yeah.
And don't start yelling. Like, my brother, oh my gosh, it was my grandfather's 90th birthday. My brother and I almost killed each other.
Yeah.
Because he was one of the most, I'm a big advocate for firearms. You know that.
Yep.
I own 5. And he was talking, he's like, I think we should surrender some of our guns. We don't need AR-15s. And I looked at him and I went, I cannot believe those communist words just came out of your mouth. I said that to him, straight to his face. And he and I looked at me and he and I started discussing. He's like, why do you need it? And I was like, have you read the Second Amendment? Do you not remember what happened? Well, I was like, Peter, they were using military-grade weapons at the time. Muskets were military weapons. Our weapons were better than the Brits' weapons. So we had better than military-grade weapons because we had rifling in our muskets. The British did not.
Yep.
And so he and I, and it was bad. I mean, it took my uncles and my dad to hold me back from, because my brother he started insulting me and everything like that, and it took everything for me not to rip his teeth out.
Yep.
And
that's an example of a just
don't do that.
Unhelpful conversation. Right?
That's an example of my brother and I not liking each other for 32 years.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and it's tough.
Yeah.
Especially when you hear something that, like, runs so counter to what you believe. I got into a discussion with a family member recently about trans stuff.
Yeah.
And like, I don't need to replay all of the arguments.
I think you and I talked about this, yeah.
It was frustrating though.
Yeah, it is.
Like, how can you believe this?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's still a relationship and there's still a person on the other end. And if
person
you're
might be stupid,
effectively bear witness to the truth, like you yelling at them is not going to help anything.
No. Showing, actually, if anything, conviction, vigilance, and being courageous will, and loving them will. But, so it's really funny when people say, what would Jesus do? to me all the time when I'm doing something, and like they look at me and they think it's out of place, and I'm like, make a whip and chase people out of the temple. I say that every time. Every time. I was like, because he was zealous.
Yeah.
He was zealous in his love for people because he's God. He doesn't want his children to go to hell.
Yeah.
You know, he was zealous, and like I famously say this: you don't crucify nice guys.
Yeah.
You crucify guys in your face, telling you you're going to hell, who are zealous. Sorry, that's the case.
Yeah. 1000%.
And so, like, obviously show righteous zeal to that person, but don't, if it's getting combative, but still show love. Be loving in that, but stand firm and stand your ground. Don't bend. Like, there was something, it was Captain America. One of my favorite Captain America quotes is like, when the river's flowing, or when the world is standing against you and believes one thing, telling you to move, and you stand in your convictions and know what you're doing is right, you say, no, you move, or something like that. And it's like, that's the case. Like, if it's about abortion or about the, homosexuality or trans or whatever it is, it's like, no, like, this is my belief. I'm not budging on this. Sorry.
And that, love the way that you put that. That also is really, really important. Like, being able to stand there and say, I'm not budging on this.
Yeah.
That's really important in the dating space as well, because like, if you do bend, and you sort of acquiesce,
what else are you going to bend to?
What else are you going to bend to? And then you're in a relationship potentially with somebody who, like, I had a conversation with a lady maybe a year and a half ago, and we went and got margs or like tacos at this someplace, and
tacos.
She made this case where she was like, oh, you Catholics, but she like had Catholic listed on her profile, so that was flag number one. That she referred to Catholics in the second person. But she was like, you Catholics, you really need to bend on contraception. If you're so in favor of abortion, you really need to bend on contraception. And it was in that moment I was like, I said to myself, nope, this is not going to work. Because if that's your perspective. Now, had I, and I'm just using this as an example, had I like sort of acquiesced in that moment, and let's say we got married, now I'm in a relationship with someone who I do not align with on some of like our most core beliefs. And that is going to cause friction.
Oh yeah. In North Carolina, I was talking to this girl, or this woman, and I liked her. And then she's Catholic, and we were talking, and talk about the future came up, marriage and things like that. She's like, oh, whoever I want to marry, I want to, when I marry my husband, I want him to wear a condom for 2 years. And I went, yeah, it's not going to happen if it's me. She looked at me, and I was like, I don't bend on contraception. I follow the church's teaching. She went, oh, why? And I was like, because you have to be open to children. The church is very clear on that. And I was like, in believing that and wanting that, like, you gotta check yourself with God. It's like, talk to a priest, make sure you're not in mortal sin, like, but yeah, it was, and so like, we went on one more date, and I was like, look, I don't think you're gonna bend on the whole contraception thing. She's like, I'm not. And I was like, then this isn't gonna work out. It's like, sorry. It's like, it's great knowing you, great meeting you. But I was like, I thought we could try and talk about it and everything, but if you're not going to bend, and I'm not going to bend. This isn't going to happen. Like, I'm not bending on it. So and things that matter. Like, if you're talking about, like, wallpaper. That shouldn't matter. I'm not bending. I want the polka dots. What? Polka dots?
You want wallpaper in general?
Some backlay isn't bad. We have a friend. She has a great bathroom. The wallpaper in her bathroom is fantastic.
Okay, sure. If it's like an accent wall, sure. That's fine. I'm thinking of like the stuff that was on my parents' house growing up, and it was everywhere. Doesn't matter what the room was. It was wallpapered.
I'm thinking about my parents' kitchen. Man, that wallpaper. I don't know if it's still there, but I think it was removed. But they had wallpaper. It was this floral pattern wallpaper.
It's always something floral.
That was up there for like 20 years. And my dad had to put up with it. And then my mom finally looked at it, and she's like, this is really ugly wallpaper. My dad went, thank you.
And I feel like even that is like, even that's helpful in the dating space because you're choosing your battles.
You have to choose your battles.
Because if you're throwing the flag at everything, then you're just generating friction.
Then it's not everybody else, it's you.
Right.
Full circle.
We're all the way back. All the way back. One thing that we touched on earlier.
Yeah.
And this sort of comes back to like openness in interactions.
Sure.
Something that I've been hearing lately has to do with like mystery.
Okay.
And pacing.
What do you mean?
So
I understand the mystery, not the pacing part.
Yeah, and this is something that I've.
Is it like the 3 day? Sorry, I interrupted you. Is it like the 3 day thing? Like at the first date, wait 3 days?
Not necessarily that formal, but like a similar principle where it's like you're shaking your head no.
No, I don't agree with that. But keep talking. Sorry, I think I know where this is going, but keep talking. So
I think that something that I've heard indirectly is that, and ladies, you keep us honest here. Guys, you keep us honest here. Some of the ladies are feeling like the guys move too quickly.
Okay.
Where it's like they meet somebody at an event and like after having a 15-minute conversation, it's like, hey, I'd like your number. I'd like to take you on a date. Not to say that that's wrong.
No.
But I can kind of see their point where it's like, I just met you and now we're like, you're asking me to consider like dating you or start entertaining the possibility that we might be like a good match permanently.
Mm-hmm. Well, remember what you said earlier?
Yeah, what's that?
Coffee date isn't a proposal.
That's true. That's true.
It's not. Like so this idea of pacing, you have to read the person. I think it's going to be person by person. With Angelica, I mean, people can, I guess there was kind of pacing, but I showed interest.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but with other people, there wasn't really pacing.
Mm-hmm.
I met them once, and then some time went by, and then saw them again, and then 3 hours later, I asked them for their number.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got a date, and we went on a date. So, like, I think it's situational. I think it's person by person. This also is part of the openness thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it is person by person. So if you feel like, let's say you're having a great conversation, you're laughing and joking around and everything like that, and she's laughing at all your stupid one-liners and dad jokes. Sorry, I just pointed at myself. Or your obscure 80s references, also me, because of a TV show. Anyway, if she's doing all that, I don't see what the issue is. Mm-hmm. It's just a phone number. It's just a date. I'm not asking you to marry me. I'm not saying don't date with a purpose, but people always say, well, I'm trying to fill my vocation. Okay. Are you? Because I love that famous quote in the Bible that says, be fruitful and stay friends. That was a Tim Hepburn joke. But it's true. It's true. Like, you have to be open, but I think it is a person-by-person basis.
Sure.
And you have to read the situation. There are going to be people who are more reserved that I will say take your time, see them, talk to them, have a conversation with them. But there are also those people, hey, I really enjoyed talking to you. I'd like to talk to you further. I'd love to get your number and let's grab a cup of coffee. Coffee date isn't a proposal. I don't even consider a coffee date a real date. A lot of people are going to cringe at that. I don't. Sorry.
Yeah, I think we're aiming in similar directions here.
Yeah.
I think the idea of taking it on a case-by-case basis is important.
Yes.
And I think the idea of showing interest is important.
Yes.
Like, if you're attracted to somebody, like, you should make an effort to interact with them.
Agreed.
And go someplace.
Yeah.
Now,
that's the confidence and courage part. Yeah.
Exactly. Now, if you're in a situation, like, let's say that you go, and this is just an example, and this, I think, is getting at the point that you're making.
Yeah.
If you're going to, let's say, if you went to the YCP National Conference back in, like, April or something.
Yeah.
And you meet somebody there that you really connect with, and let's say that they live in Phoenix.
Yeah.
Let's just say. The odds of you connecting with that person after the conference are pretty small. Like, and so that's why it's really important to be a bit more direct there and say, hey, I had a really good time interacting with you. I'd love to get your contact info. Maybe we do a Zoom call. something like
or
that.
Or a phone, can I call you?
Yeah, can I call you at some point?
Yeah.
That I think is really important, and it's appropriate for the circumstance.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, this is where we might diverge.
Yeah.
I think what some people are expressing is like, I am around the same group of like 12 to 15 people consistently, and I know we sort of roll our eyes at the I don't want to ruin the friendship thing.
Yeah, no, ruin the friendship.
But I think that there is something to that, in the sense that if we go on a date, like the two of us in like this sort of circle of friends that we're part of,
yeah,
and it doesn't work out, then it like could be really awkward and it could cause division or something like that. And I think that there are holes in that objection.
Yeah.
But I also think, reading that circumstance, I don't think that like, oh, I've had one conversation with you, boom.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I don't think you play that one as aggressive as you do like
No, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
So it depends, right? Now, if it was a relationship, like if you were in the same friend group and there was a relationship and both parties were a part of that friend group.
Yeah.
Then could it get awkward? Yeah, sure. But there's also this thing of being adults.
Mm-hmm.
We're adults. Grow up. It happens. Mm-hmm. You're seeking your vocation.
Mm-hmm.
Who cares? Did somebody die?
Mm-hmm.
No. Was it terrible? Probably not. Mm-hmm. You don't have to talk to each other.
Yep.
Be cordial. Say, hey, how you doing? What's new? What's going on?
Mm-hmm.
Or you don't even have to talk to. I don't care. But no, I think people put too much pressure on that, and then I think people just put too much pressure on, especially if it's just a couple dates, and you know it ends relatively well. Just be cordial with the person.
Mm-hmm.
Don't make it awkward for everybody else, and be an adult.
Sure.
Like, we're grown-ups. Let's not be high school.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry. Like, that's a high school drama issue in my opinion.
Sure.
And being a product of public schooling, I saw that every day, especially in band, in marching band. I mean, you're around the same 130 kids for months, and it's such a tight group. And if you're an outcast, like I was, in band, because I had my, like, if I were to put my foot, like, let's say you had sports, fitness, anime, band, reading, you know, a bunch of stuff, scouts, in a circle, and my foot is literally in the middle of all of them.
Sure.
So like some people are, I touch a lot of different things because I have a lot of interests. Yep. So I just, for that whole thing, no, I understand what you're saying, and it also is a case-by-case basis, but I say for the majority of the time it shouldn't be an issue, because you should know how to handle your emotions and just be an adult.
I agree with that last statement. I feel like there's been circumstances where I've heard no, and no sucks.
No sucks. No is the worst thing in the world.
And I know that sucks, and it has kept me from taking action in other places because I'm scared of hearing no. And I think part of what that problem is, we'll come back to like the overall pacing thing in a second.
Yeah.
But I feel like part of what the problem is there, I heard this recently, and I might be borrowing this from like Buddhism or Hinduism or something like that. Doesn't mean we're buying into the theology or whatever of those religions, but like they
could have good quotes,
smart stuff to say. It's like your pain is one arrow. You get hit with that pain, ow, that hurts.
Yeah.
But then the meaning that you assign to the pain that you get hit with is a second arrow. And that's one where you take the bow and you point it at yourself and boom.
Yeah.
And that is something that I feel like I, in this season, am working on doing a better job with.
Yeah.
Where it's like, this bad thing happened to me, and historically speaking, I would take that and be like, I'm never going to get the thing that I want.
Yeah.
Maybe if you're listening, you resonate with that. Maybe if you're listening, you like have entertained other sorts of narratives where it's like, this thing happened to me that hurt and that sucked.
Yeah.
And now the meaning that I'm assigning to it is causing me more suffering. Like, maybe God doesn't love me. Like, maybe I'm never going to find this.
Go from A to Z real fast.
Right, exactly. And then like it's self-inflicted.
Yeah.
And I feel like that is part of the being an adult thing that you're talking about.
Yeah.
Where it's like, you know what? I tried this thing. It didn't work. here's what I'm going to do instead.
Oh yeah. Like, so my mom, I was driving home, and this was before Angelica. I was driving home, and the girl I was going on a couple of, I was pursuing at the time, who I was unsure about, called me, and we called it off. And I was like, yeah, it's fine. Like, I think you're fantastic. She's like, I think you're great. She's like, you're one of, she gave me a litany of compliments. And I called my mom afterwards. I was like, well, that's done. And she was like, and people are saying I should wait like 2 weeks. My mom went, Michael. And this is when I realized, like, it shouldn't be an issue. How many days did you go on with this girl? I was like, 2. She's like, 3 days, tops, and then pursue somebody else. She's like, it shouldn't even take you 3 days. She's like, you guys are adults. Like, come on. And I was like, there's so much wisdom in that. Like, I think a lot of the issue today is we just want to hold on to these friendships, and we're afraid to let go of them. And I'm like, and I was talking to Angelica's roommates about this last night, and I was like, when I'm married, I'm not going to be calling or texting other women. My friendships with women are over. I'll be, I guess, the acquaintances or I don't know what the proper term is for that, but it's not going to be friends. Like a friend is somebody you call or text or talk to on a daily basis, or like a more frequent basis. If I see them in person, hey, what's going on? What's new? Oh my gosh, you have 7 kids. That's great. Like, different. But I'm not going to be calling or texting them. And I think a lot of and this coincides with ruin the friendship. I think a lot of people want to hold on to this idea that they're going to stay friends with these people forever. And it's like, no, you're not. Jimmy did the most gangster thing I've ever done in that regard. He was texting Corinne about something, and he texted both Zach and Corinne.
Okay.
Because Corinne's married. He respects that.
I think we have similar perspectives on this thing. I think verbiage is not somewhere that I want to get hung up.
No, me neither. But like, you know what I'm talking about.
Exactly. Like, you've devoted yourself to one person.
Yes.
And like
that's your focus.
You want to focus on her.
Yes.
And I feel like you're still friends with the other women that are in your life, or like just using that as an example. Yeah. And like for women, it goes the opposite way. Like, you're still friends with the other men in your life.
Right, but you're not going to be close to them.
Yes.
Like, before Ashley got married and before I started dating Angelica, Ash and I would talk frequently. On the phone, we would text.
Sure.
Not anymore.
Sure. I don't agree with this fully.
That's fine. You don't have to.
I'm standing firm in my
That's
conviction.
totally fine. You don't have to agree with it.
Yeah.
But how many married women do you text? Other than your mom? And
I know what you're talking about. Yeah. Like, there is such a thing as respecting the marriage that they are now part of.
Yeah.
But like, I will still be vulnerable with like my friends Katie and Eric. Like, Katie and Eric are married. They live up in Michigan. What's up if you're listening to this? How's it going? And I will still be like vulnerable. And
are you vulnerable with Katie one-on-one?
Not one-on-one, no.
That's the thing.
Okay.
That's what my point is.
I agree with you there.
That is my point.
Yeah.
You can when people get married, they obviously kind of become one unit.
But wait a second. No, actually, I could totally see being at like a party or an event or something like that. Like, I was vulnerable with Ange one-on-one. I know you guys aren't married.
Yeah.
But I know you're in a committed relationship.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like that was a violation of that relationship.
I agree with that. It wasn't.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it was. But when marriage becomes a thing, things, I think, change a little bit. I would be vulnerable with them together. I wouldn't be vulnerable with just the wife. Because I think it goes back to the guarding the heart thing. I think at that point, it's no longer there. It's going to sound, there's no real good way of phrasing this. They have their own relationship baggage and drama to deal with. You putting yours on theirs, I don't think is appropriate, especially for a woman by herself, because she's dealing with already now her husband, who has now opened every door.
Right. And I feel like we are aiming in similar directions here. I think that like it would not be appropriate for me to
like, comrade, we will use your example.
Yeah, go ahead.
Like, it would not be appropriate for me to go into the depths of everything that I'm emotionally processing with Ange, because that is space that is reserved for the two of you.
Yeah.
And so I think the question that we're getting at here is not a question of friends versus acquaintances.
Yeah, it's not.
It's friends, but like it's a question of depth.
It's a hierarchy, or not a hierarchy, but depth. I think is the best thing. So like, I'm not saying. So I think what happens is you might have deep friendships with women prior to marriage, and then post marriage, they definitely become more surface level.
Surface feels like too strong of a word, like because surface to me says acquaintance.
Okay.
I don't think surface is the right word. I think like if you're in a pool, let's say, let's say the pool goes from 1 foot to 12 feet.
Yeah.
Your acquaintances are at the 1 foot, your spouse is at the 12 foot, and then your friends like might be somewhere in like the 5 to 6 foot range.
Yeah.
So like you and Ange, or like your relationship with Ange is in the 12 foot space.
Yeah.
Maybe my relationship with Ange, just as an example, is like in the 5 to 6 foot range.
That would make sense.
Just as an example.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I see your point. I still, for me, it's like I will be vulnerable with Angelica, and I really won't be super vulnerable with other women.
Mm-hmm.
Because I just don't view it, because I now have somebody I can be vulnerable with, and she can be vulnerable with me.
Mm-hmm.
So I think a lot of the times when in the relationship, you shouldn't be, like, I shouldn't be vulnerable, like, in a relationship with Angelica with somebody like Teresa.
Sure.
I shouldn't be vulnerable with Teresa. I should only be vulnerable with Angelica.
At all?
Yeah. I don't think maybe like if something is showing and she asks me what's wrong and I can kind of go into a little bit of it.
Yeah.
But like my heart, that's a piece of my heart.
Yeah.
I'm trying to give that to Angelica.
Yeah.
I'm not going to give a piece to Teresa because my heart is going to Angelica.
I think we are aiming in the same direction.
Yeah, I think so too.
I think it's the respect for the relationship.
Yes.
And like saving that depth for the person that you committed yourself to.
Yeah.
And this kind of comes back to, I know we're almost out of time, but this comes back to the conversation earlier about like mystery, intentionality, and pacing. Like, as we've been talking about this, it made me think of like this whole process as kind of like one big pool.
Yeah.
It's the dating pool.
You're not wrong. Like it's 1 to 12 feet and
And I think what I was getting at earlier with pacing and intentionality is like, you're in this pool, and this is more applying to, I'd have to like really think hard about like a parallel metaphor for the situation in Phoenix or like whatever, like YCP national thing. That's a different context.
Yeah.
What I'm talking about is like the situation that the Nashville community is in.
Sure.
I think that it's sort of like each person is their own pool.
Okay.
And what you do is you sort of like wade into the pool, like you get into like the 1 foot range, and you see like how the water is. And you
testing the water.
Testing the water, exactly. Then you like, if you find that it's receptive or your interactions are receptive, you go a little further.
Yeah.
And you see, and you sort of test the water there.
Yeah.
And it's like a gradient.
Sure, no, I agree with that. Yeah.
The water in the 1 foot range is not guaranteed to be the same water in the 2 to 3 foot range.
Just cannonball straight into the 12 foot.
Exactly. And what that does, because like, I think what I'm coaching and what I'm pushing towards here is like, yes, we want to be adults. Yes, we want people to be mature. We're also human.
Sure. Yeah. I'm not disagreeing with that.
And sometimes like we can go into like, you know what, I am going to be like an adult about this. I'm going to ask. And if I get rejected, I'm going to be okay with it. But I don't think that's always the case.
It's not.
Like, people don't know how to act. And so what I'm coaching for here is like, how do you be intentional and then discern which of those shots are really worth taking? How do you discern which of those are thrash, like, I just want my vocation, to, you know what, I really connect with this person and I feel like they're receptive to me.
Yeah.
And I'm willing to risk things maybe being awkward. And I think that takes time to discern that.
It does.
Sort of the core of this.
It does take time to discern it. If you're having the same conversation with this person over and over and over again,
probably not worth it.
No, I would say probably not, because they're not. There's a disconnect. They might be closed off. You might be closed off. You know, it could be something like that. If you're having good conversations with the person,
yeah.
If they're laughing at all your jokes, if they touch your arm in their joke, and and you're observant, and they drop the handkerchief. Women drop the damn handkerchief.
Well, I want to make sure we don't lose that.
I know.
I know we mentioned that earlier.
Yeah. We're intuitive people, and I know we're human. We can't use that as a constant crutch, though. I think you'll know. And that's kind of a cop-out answer, but I also wholeheartedly agree with that. Mm-hmm. It'll be a gut feeling. I hate the word vibes, but there'll be some kind of vibe.
Mm-hmm. Something that I was thinking about as we prepared for this podcast is how it's kind of spooky how consistently my mom's advice is like really solid advice.
Yeah, right? Moms give great advice.
My mom, like, I always used to roll my eyes at like mom being like, oh, just be friends, like make a lot of friends, and like then you're gonna meet somebody where the vibe is gonna be like, she didn't use the word vibe.
Yeah, but
but like you're gonna meet somebody where you're not gonna have to try that hard.
Yeah.
Like you're just gonna connect with somebody. And I was like, okay, like whatever, mom. But like why don't you set me up with the neighbor next door who's like super crunchy, like whatever. Like but now
makes sense.
It makes total sense. And here's the other thing too, like my mom, she's smart, don't get me wrong, but she's also not someone who like reads books on dating.
Yeah.
Like this is a lot of stuff that she's just intuited and has like gotten from life experience.
Yeah, and dating back then isn't dating today.
Mm-hmm.
People want instant satisfaction.
Yeah.
I'm not saying they didn't back then, but it's not to the point it was today. I mean, like Amazon's a thing, so we want something tomorrow. Like and we don't want to leave our house doing it.
Yep.
So, and I agree with that. My mom's the same way. Mm-hmm. My mom has feelings about people. My mom has never liked any of the girls I've dated until Angelica. It's like she told me that, and I know when my mom is telling me the God's honest truth. Mm-hmm. My mom will just look at me and be like, I'd be like, oh, what'd you think of so and so? Oh, she was nice.
Not so much. Yeah.
What'd you think of so and so? Yeah, she was nice. And that's in my head. I'm like, oh, my mom doesn't like him. I asked my mom, what do you think of Angelica? I really liked her. And I looked at my mom and I went, what?
Wait a second.
She's like, yeah, I really liked her. She was a nice young lady, and I really liked her. And I was like, victory! You know, like I found a woman that my mom really likes. And like my dad yesterday, I talked to him on the phone, and he was like, oh yeah, tell Angelica I said hello, and that we're excited to see her again. I was like, done. You know, so.
That's awesome. Yeah, 100% agree.
So you want to talk about dropping the handkerchief?
I do, yeah. I feel like that is a really good place to sort of wrap things up here.
Yeah.
Like, most of what we've talked about, and I hope it's come across that way.
I hope so.
If we haven't, like, it... Anyway.
I'll get an earful from somebody, I'm sure.
You know what? Like, I don't think anything that we've said is, like, that groundbreaking, but I feel like a lot of what we talked about covers both men and women. It's something that we all need to be keeping in mind.
I apologize to anybody listening. I am sorry, like, if I focused on one sex versus the other.
No.
This is for both sexes.
Yeah.
Like, I see this on both sides.
100%. 100%.
Yeah.
We're going to close with two statements that we had in our, like, sort of preparatory docs.
Yeah.
One applies to, like, the women, and one applies to the guys. Yeah. The first one is dropping the handkerchief.
Yeah.
Now, I have a sense of what this means, and I could probably articulate it.
Sure.
But I want to hear it from you first.
So,
what does that mean?
It literally meant 200 plus years ago, dropping a handkerchief.
Okay.
If a woman picks the spouse, man does not pick their wife, wife picks their husband. Mm-hmm. That's historically been the case, except when we clubbed people on the head.
And there's a biological reason.
There is a biological reason for that.
Women have more at stake in pregnancy.
Exactly.
And so it makes more sense for them to be pickier.
100%.
Choosier.
So, what I mean by drop the handkerchief, literally meant dropping a handkerchief 200 years ago. So, women during colonial times and before would walk past a man they fancied and they would drop their handkerchief. And if the man reciprocated, he would run to the handkerchief, pick it up, and save the damsel by being like, madam, you dropped your handkerchief. Mm-hmm. And so then they would engage in conversation and then maybe enjoy an evening together. Now, laugh at his dumb jokes. Touch his arm. Mm-hmm. Say, ah ha ha ha. Touch. That's so funny. Yep. Touch his shoulder.
A signal.
A signal. It is literally a signal. Give him a signal. Guys, I used to say guys are dumb. We're not dumb. We're just not the most observant at times because we're doing other things.
Yeah.
For me, a lot of the times what I'm doing is just being aware of my surroundings. I always am. Like if you watch me eat at a restaurant, I will always try and sit my back to the wall so I can see what's going on. We're doing other things, and I'm not saying women aren't, but I'm saying we're not the most observant people. So give us a signal to let us know that you're interested, because we might be interested. And women are like, well, we shouldn't have to. It's literally history. It's actually a thing. Like, it is built into your DNA. Because, like Mathew said, women have more at stake. Guys, pay attention. Pay attention. And don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. If you like a girl and you haven't even gotten a signal, just don't let fear pause you.
I know what you're getting at here, and I know that like touching in general in like our culture is sort of indicated, or it's an indication of interest.
Yeah.
And I remember like hearing that for the first time and being like, you can do that like in a conversation with somebody, like reach out and touch their arm or something like that. And like I remember the first time hearing that, and maybe you're listening to this and thinking like, touch someone in conversation? That sounds weird. Maybe it's natural to you and you're like, yeah, I know this already. Man, thanks. But like the first couple times you do it, it might feel a little weird.
It's gonna feel weird, but then it just...
But just do it.
Yeah.
And don't feel like you have to do it in a conversation, but if you're interested in somebody, there needs to be some sort of signal. Like ones that I look for in addition to like some sort of touch on the arm or something like that, like laughing at my jokes, that's good.
If nobody else is laughing and they're laughing.
Right. That's a good indicator. Maybe initiating an interaction.
Yeah, they'll reach up to you. I don't want to use names in this scenario, but there was a time we were having a party at our house, and I was DJing the music, and we were dancing, and a girl I was interested in came up 5 seconds before I asked her to ask me to dance. Yeah. She engaged that. That was her dropping the handkerchief, showing that she could, I believe, that she could be interested. And then she and I danced. Yeah, that's a lot. And so that was that case. Yeah. And she and I went on a couple dates, and then nothing came of it. But she, if you're listening to this and you know who this is, you crushed it. Thank you. So it was great.
Yeah, definitely. I think that those indicators are really, really important because it's a differentiator. Yeah. But it's also, and here's a question. I feel like this is important. Yeah. Why, for a man or a woman, more so for women, why can't they just be like, hey, I like you?
They can. You absolutely can. Go ahead. Go nuts.
Okay. Why don't they?
Rejection, fear of rejection. So men, the reason why men usually ask out women is men take on the rejection. Women normally don't take on that rejection. But because if a woman comes up and says, hey, Mathew, I like you, and you go, oh, thanks, I'm not interested. I actually know 2 people that happened to. And she was crushed. Men can, I guess, bounce back a little easier than women. I'm not saying women can't bounce back, but men can bounce back normally a little easier.
And I think rejection, we'll get to chivalry here in just a second. I have one more point I want to add on that. I think rejection is really, really important. Yes. And I think it's part of chivalry. Yeah. But then I also think part of the reason a lot of this stuff is not explicit in the interactions is because when there is that element of mystery, it adds to the excitement.
It does.
If I, an example I like to use is if I've got a cookie in my hand.
Yeah.
Let's say or let's say I have a cookie. If I walk up to you and I say hey, I have a cookie, here it is, and you just take the cookie, you're like, thanks.
What'd you do to it?
Right. There's no mystery in that. Versus if I go I don't have a cookie, there's also no mystery in that either. But if I give you a little bit of the cookie and I'm like, here's a little
try this.
Try this. Try this out.
And you're like, ooh, that's good.
And wait a second, there's got to be more to that
cookie. Yeah.
Or you might hear this in how people tell stories where someone might go on and on and on and on and on and answer all of your questions right away. Someone also might, and you're like, oh, I didn't ask for all that much. Yeah. You just sort of dumped on me. Someone also might be like, I did this. And there's nothing to go on.
Yeah.
Versus if someone sort of leads with, oh, I had an interesting weekend.
Yeah. What would you do? Yeah. Or somebody says yada, yada, yada.
Right.
It's a very famous Seinfeld thing. And it's you're leaving out what's the yada, yada, yada?
Exactly. Exactly. And I think mystery operates on that exact same principle.
I agree with that. Yeah.
It's how do you how do you pursue interactions that like are intentional and show interest, but like not in an overt way.
Yeah.
Where it's like, how do you intentionally show up for this person without being like, hey, I like you, give me your number.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. I agree with that. Yeah. So
and
chivalry. Oh no, you had
and I think dropping the handkerchief kind of like ties into that.
It does. I agree. Yeah.
It's not the woman saying like, "Hey, I like you," but like her touching your elbow is an indicator.
Yeah, it's like,
what's going on here?
Yeah.
But chivalry. Go ahead.
So, for everybody who's listening to this, if you have ever read the Code of Chivalry, 98% of it is how to engage in combat. I want to point that out. That being said, I think there are 2 points or 3 points in the Code of Chivalry about how to treat a woman.
Okay.
A lot of men, unfortunately, don't agree with the Code of Chivalry and how to treat a woman. By, the standard guy thing. Like, I don't know if it's standard. Like, I guess in today's society it's not, but like opening the door, going to pick her up after. Like, if she says no to picking, offer though. Mm-hmm. But like, let's say, so Angelica and I, better yet, the other girl that I was pursuing before Angelica, she and I were talking back and forth before our first date, and I was like, are you okay? I was like, are you okay with me picking you up? She's like, well, I don't think you're an axe murderer, so yeah, that's fine. And so it's like, but if she said no, I'd be more comfortable meeting you there, fine. But you offered. You offered. And women, please don't be offended by a guy offering to pick you up, because I know so many women that are like, no. Or like if a guy wants to walk you to your car, mm-hmm. It might not have a secondary effect. Like, he's just being nice. Mm-hmm. Where I went to college at Franciscan, that was a normal thing to do. That was very normal. We walked from our house, every woman to their car, and we made sure that if it was like more than, like if it was 2 girls, one guy could go. If it was more than that, you had multiple guys following you to make sure that you were safe. That's the point. Yep. I think that is very chivalrous. Mm-hmm. Paying for the first date, I think, is also very chivalrous. Yep.
Protection and provision.
Protection and provision.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's this book, I forget, it's like the 3 Marks of Manhood or something like that. It's how to be priest, prophet, and king of your family. And I feel like both of these, I know priest is like bringing your family to God and like the sacraments and things like that. I forget what prophet is, but like king is provision and protection. Yeah. And I feel like that is what, now there's a difference between being controlling and being like protective.
Yes, I agree with that.
And I feel like you've touched on it a couple of times. I feel like it's not, I am walking to you to your car. Although in some circumstances it might be like, hey, like, I would like to walk you to your car or something like that. But a lot of it comes down to, here's a path you can take. I'd love to offer this to you.
Yeah, I want to walk you to your car and make sure you're safe.
Right.
Like, we live in an area, like, we have people who live in areas that aren't necessarily the best. Yep. That's the truth. So a guy offering to walk you to your car shouldn't be a big deal. Yep. Like, I'm sorry. Like, it shouldn't be. Like, he's being a gentleman. You can say no, mm-hmm. that you are more within your right. Mm-hmm. But having a guy, it's a protection thing. Yep. That's all it is. Now, the guy might have ulterior motives, sometimes, where he wants to get your number. But it's also a time for the guy to have a moment with you, mm-hmm. if he likes you. And you know it's coming. Like, you know it's coming. Mm-hmm. Like, the guy wants to engage with you the entire time in the party and talk to you and make sure that you have a drink or, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. Like, and girls know when guys are interested and guys know when girls are interested, usually. So it could have been the only time that he has a second to take you to your car to ask you for your number, mm-hmm. if that's the scenario. But I would say 3/4 of the time, they're just being nice. Yeah. They're being a good man. Yeah. You are more than welcome to say no. I'm not saying you cannot say no.
And it's sort of like we said earlier that a date is not a marriage proposal.
Yeah.
And walking someone to their car is not a marriage proposal. And like, I think both sides need to hear that. Not just the ladies, but like the guys also need to hear that. Like, if you're interested in somebody and you walk her to your car, it doesn't mean that she's going to be like, my prince.
No, like, she's just like, thank you and be on her way.
Exactly. And I feel like that kind of ties back to the theme of this whole conversation, where it's like, we're not the ones in control and we have to be open. Yeah. So it's like, how do you put yourself out there?
Exactly. Ways? I agree with that. So, yeah. I mean, ending it with that, just, both sides, be open, be courageous, don't confuse standards and expectations.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks again for your time, Mike.
Dude, absolutely. Awesome. Thanks for having me. It's fantastic.